what's the difference between an influencer and a spokesman?
Why I think on this episode of the DevOps Roundup podcast, we're going to answer the question, should your developer relations person be a technical person or not? We're going to get into this and so much more in this episode, so make sure you hit the subscribe button, drop a like, and let's get started, Sean.
All right, well,
What are you
thanks,
here
Paul.
for? The snacks?
Oh, you haven't seen this T-shirt before? So I
Who
found
gave you
this.
this shirt?
Yeah, I found this shirt after you shared a meme with me. I think it was about Disney snacks. So I'm like, surely I can find that as a snack. As online as a T-shirt. And so this is the closest I could find.
You've ruined snacks for me because everywhere we go, it's like snacks for Sean. And so that's what you get 11 p.m. pictures of cookies in my hand.
I appreciated that late night picture of chocolate chip cookies. Yes.
Yep. Anyways, back to the topic after your very distracting T-shirt. Should your developer relations individual be a technical person? And I think it helps, like we've done in previous episodes. Let's start by defining what is a DevRel or development relationships role.
Yeah, exactly. So DevRel, you just said it, is short because for development relations. I'm assuming they're taking a play off DevOps or something like that, and it came up with the not quite acronym, the abbreviation. I'm not sure how old this role is. I remember people being more in the like brand ambassadors going back into the 80s, but in software tool specifically. Let's shorten our influence down to that. I do remember back in the HP days and the IBM days that they were individuals that were hired by the vendors to go out and talk to the communities, to talk to customers, to get them excited about upcoming releases and roadmaps and things like that. Sometimes they were the project managers, but more often than not, they were somebody that just had decent social skills and could talk to the public. I'm not sure if that was the whole beginning of the DevRel. Obviously DevRel has been rebranded, in the last couple of years. But were they truly developer advocates back at that time?
Well, let's back up though, because you have a word developer, which usually implies technical, right? You're not going to have a marketing person be a developer per se. Different
I always assume software engineer when I hear developer. Now, I'm probably being a little too narrow, but I think for discussion purposes, a software developer.
Okay. So we have the developer part, and then we have relations, right? Which relations is now usually like an HR thing, a people thing, a very extroverted thing. So we have a bit of an oxymoron with our introverted extrovert. Is basically what a developer relation means.
Yeah, you have many more introverted developers than you have extroverted ones.
Right. And so typically then what I've seen in practice because of this oxymoron, and is just juxtaposition the right word?
Sure. Where are you going with it though?
Well, that mostly people that fall into this DevRel role are usually non-tech people. Because you need to be more extroverted than you are introverted to be comfortable in this role. It's a forward-facing role, right? You're talking to people the majority of the time. You're building relationships. You're evangelizing. You're spreading the good word
you're right on with that word, evangelists. That's what these roles have become.
I think need to be technical to be an evangelist.
I think you do in our industry, but I don't think so in general.
I would say in all IT, though, which is where this role predominantly lives in, you have to be technical.
I would agree. And so when this role was more apparent to me that it actually existed as a role was probably about 15 years ago, when podcasts were, that was the peak of everyone having a podcast. Not a YouTube channel because it's so different, um, but having podcasts like this one, where you get people that are being hired by uh, vendors or associations to talk about their product or agendas on on their podcast. And the longer you listen to them, the more you assume that they have a technical background. And one particular one that I still listen to today, I still like, and I met a number of their hosts, but I won't name it because I don't want to I don't want to throw shade at them. They had a holiday episode where they all talked about their background. And surprisingly enough, they all came from a theater background, and none of them had technical degrees. And not necessarily that technical degree is always necessary in IT, but at least technical experience is necessary. And none of them had that. Yet they're sitting there talking about the biggest brands of
Yeah.
that decade, and really promoting, this is these are the brands you need to bring in if you're doing DevOps, and
Yeah, we're probably gonna get a lot of hate for what I'm about to say, but I'm gonna say it. But I've always seen the DevRel, the Dev Advocate, which we're gonna get into other terms within this umbrella. But I've always seen that this role as basically the same way I've seen like the Scrum Master role in Agile, where you weren't smart enough to code, but you could deal with people, so you get this job.
All right, my next stand up, I'm going to use that. So I'm like, I guess you're just not smart enough to code.
That I mean, that's essentially I was always very interested in this DevRel role because I was technical enough to read code and understand code and and follow along, but not smart enough to be the one producing the code. But also had the people enough skills, right? I wasn't a jerk. I wasn't rude because there's certain
It's a low
people
bar in
skills,
IT. As long as you're not a jerk, you're
right?
cool.
But that's the people skills you need, and like you like I was watching Tesla's always got to make it into our episodes, right?
Uh-oh.
And so I was watching a video yesterday, and this YouTuber that I don't know if you've heard of her, it's Kim Java. She used to have a YouTube channel called Like Tesla, but now it's just Kim Java. Well,
Uh,
anyways, she's early Tesla years, and so she just had an opportunity. She was up in Whidbey Island in the Seattle area, and she had an opportunity to go talk to Martin Eberhart. No, not ringing any names.
yeah, and name dropping Tesla people, I'm
Well,
not going to pick up on
he's the co-founder of Tesla,
them. Okay.
right? And some would argue the originating, like he had the idea to create Tesla Motors,
Okay. Oh,
and
cool.
he was looking for investors. Him along with another friend were looking for investors, and then that's when Elon stumbled into his life, and then everything went a different route, right? But this guy, if you know the history a little bit, got fired from Tesla, right? And Elon and him clashed, and they clashed so much that for the last 20 years they don't talk to each other at all, right? But listening to the podcast from Martin, right, and hearing him, he is a true 100% nerd, like a
Okay.
computer nerd, right? And so he, like in his thought process, like as I'm hearing his logic and how he thinks and how he processes information, and how he was talking to this very non-techie person. The interviewer, she she likes Tesla, but that's about her level of uh, authority in the Tesla world, right?
Okay.
She drives a Tesla, right?
Uh,
So she doesn't know any of the intricate details of how engineering or drive motors or anything work. And here's the engineer designing, talking about we picked the Lotus Elise because of this, and this, and this super technical terms. And she would cut him off because she would say like, I heard something from Elon different, right? And he very rudely, in my opinion, cut her back off and corrected her, but in a non-people way. And that's kind of what I think of these like
Mm.
when you're a developer, you don't really have people skills, right? Like you know your domain, you're really, really good at your domain, but articulating your intelligence is probably not the easiest thing to do.
So yeah, not only do they not have people skills, I would say that they are lacking in the IT world, um, but also patience is lacking. I would say empathy. A lot
All
of
the
times,
people skills.
all these are, I guess, all these roll up into people
Yeah.
skills.
But that's why you end up, that's why I think you end up with these DevRels that are non-technical, because I think it's easier.
Mhm.
Have you ever read Love is a Fallacy?
No, I have not.
Oh my gosh, you've never read Love is a Fallacy? Did you ever
No.
learn logical fallacies in like grade school?
Oh, you're saying logical fallacies.
Well, the book is called Love is a Fallacy, but
That's what I thought you said.
yeah, it's a love story that teaches you logical fallacies.
Okay, no, I'm a big fan of a podcast that specifically they focus on logical fallacies,
Right.
and they have
Well,
a long list of the types of and callers would call in and ask, is this
a logical
scenario
fallacy.
a logical
Well,
fallacy, and if so, is it this one?
well,
And
I love logical fallacies, and I specifically love is a fallacy. It's a short novel, short story, really, to teach you all the different logical
okay,
fallacies. And in it,
that's
the
cool.
guy, the main character, is trying to get his best friend's girlfriend to fall in love with him.
Okay,
Right? He really, really loves his best friend's girlfriend,
the
and
whole Jesse's girls story.
probably. But the
Okay,
thing is, the girl's really, really, really pretty. Okay. And again, don't come at me. This story is long. I know we're in a more woke era, but the premise of the story is that he's got this really pretty girl that he loves, but she's dumb. And so his logic is it's easier to turn a pretty dumb girl smart than it is to make an ugly smart girl pretty. That again, his words in the book. And so I would argue that in the DevRel experience, it's easier to turn a person that knows how to speak to people and teach them how to code than it is to take a person that knows how to code and make them know how to work with people.
I would completely agree with that. And to kind of double down on that, they don't need to know how to code good. They just need to know how to code. Right. So I guess this goes back to, when I'm interfacing with a DevRel individual that I don't know is a DevRel. So like they're speaking at a conference or something like that, and I'm assuming that they're a developer, or they're an expert in what they're speaking about, and I get like maybe 5 to 10 minutes into the session, and it turns out that they're a DevRel guy, or gal, and their experience is so shallow that I feel like I'm wasting my time, and I basically get turned off from the entire session, and then I get upset at the conference that I'm at, and like, what
And I
what was
think
all this about? Yeah.
yeah. And you bring up a really good point though, right? Because if I were to take on the DevRel position, that would be my biggest worry because what you just described would be synonymous to me with imposter syndrome if I was that individual.
Mhm.
Because when you're talking, and goes back to
Well,
another
is
story
it
that I
really, the imposter part's right, but is it really a syndrome?
it's not really a syndrome.
Because it's true. They are being an imposter. They know enough about the material to possibly fool part of the audience into listening to the entire session. But overall, it's a commercial. They're
Right.
just here as an advertisement.
But
And I
that's what I
think,
would be most scared, right? Because you kind of need to know your tech. You need to know how your product works deeply in order to evangelize it. Because then also, what are you evangelizing if not then a script?
yeah, you're an actor at that point, and just going through a script, and so um,
To my opinion, right? It's I think you have a runway of opportunity, right? That you can like there's enough fake it till you make it type of thing.
yeah.
But at some point you do gotta like know your stuff. Because it's very transparent when you don't, right?
I think it works against you once you're exposed as not having the depth if you're a developer relation uh, person, because you're trying to build a relationship with developers, and developers typically have no tolerance for fools, and as soon as you're labeled a fool, it's almost impossible to get that credit
Yeah,
back.
but that is a toxic cultural trait of the developer world where
It is.
if you aren't as smart or can't keep up, then you're usually casted out. Which is why usually the world of IT is such a bad place to be, right? Or from a toxic perspective, right? It's not for the faint of heart in IT. You got to
Well,
know, you got to keep up with your skills.
yeah, and that's why there's a trend in the what do you want to call it, uh, the workplace tolerance, and I can't think of the actual word that I had tip of my tongue. It disappeared. But there's a lot of people that in the different communities for the different vendors, and even in DevOps days, that will sit there and talk about toxic workplaces, and
Right.
tolerance, and making your making the software role a more pleasant place. And
Yeah. No, this reminds me of going back to the Boeing company. Previous CEO was a finance. He was like the CFO that got promoted to CEO because the previous CEO got caught up with the whole planes falling out of the sky thing, right? But
not a jumbotron.
yeah. But Elon Musk, I think, put it most best in an interview that he did, where he was like, "How in the world are you the CEO of a company if you've never even walked the manufacturing line of your own aircrafts?"
Hmm.
Right? Like, how are
Yeah,
you the
that's
person
the
that's
problem.
responsible to understand where every nut and every bolt goes
Mhm.
when you've never even seen where the nuts and the bolts go? And I think that's a very relatable story we can pull back into a DevRel, right? Like to be a developer relations, right? We need to have these intimate obsessions with the technology that we're preaching.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, right? Because I think what we need to do, what we have not done in this episode so far, is explain why is there a DevRel
Yeah,
position?
I was going to try to move the conversation that way as
Yeah, so
well.
let's jump to
Like,
that because then
what's the underlying ppurpose
my
of?
2 cents from my observations has been you like that whole if you build it they'll come is not true.
True.
So you build this technology, and your phones, your iPhones are nothing without the developers.
Hmm.
So when iOS first came out, you have an app or have a phone with apps that Apple made, which is a norm up until 2007. But Apple dominated because of that app store. It caught everybody
True.
off guard,
True.
right?
Yeah.
But you need to establish relationships with not your internal developers, but with the developers that are going to build on your platform.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of companies have this new model where, like Meta and literally every company, I think nowadays has some platform that they build on, and then they invite the market to come in and
Hmm.
build. But because of steep learning curves, you have this DevRel position to help lessen the curve, which is the oxymoron of how do you lessen the curve when your DevRel is not technical?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think the definition is probably a little bit different depending on the company that has hired the DevRel person, or the DevRel role. So if I'm a software vendor, um, it's different than if I'm a vendor of a product that has a platform like your.
Like an Atlassian or an Apple or Google.
Yeah, those would be two different use cases for a DevRel. Um, while Atlassian has kind of more of a crossover to Apple because they both have marketplaces that have apps that you need to attract those developers to make those apps to further the marketplace. Atlassian also has to, um, you know, uh, and I think Atlassian, they're a great example of why you need a DevRel, because Jira grew through grassroots methods. It basically was word of mouth. It was shadow IT, and all these software groups would stand up Jira behind the scenes. They'd use the HPQC or ClearQuest or Rally or something like that as the official tool, but Jira was there behind the scenes, and in the long run, Jira won because of that. And how do you grow that word of mouth, that developers recommending to other developers this, and that's where you get the DevRel position. Um, but is that more of a developer advocate versus a brand ambassador at that point? Now with Apple or Samsung or Google, then it's pretty much 100%. Let's get other developers to get onto our platform so we can explode our marketplace.
Now, have you met Scott Hanselman or heard of Scott Hanselman?
I've heard of him. I'm terrible at remembering who I've met.
Yeah. So I think if I were to, so this gentleman here, he's the vice president of developer community at Microsoft.
Okay.
And if you go to his website, which I have over here, you'll notice that he's done a TED Talk.
Okay.
But this is what stands out about Scott for me, is that he's a teacher, evangelist, speaks to all over, to whoever will listen. But I have written code that you've used, and blogging and podcast for 20 years and coding for 30. So this is a person who talks the talk and walks the walk and does everything.
But
this is a model citizen of
being an advocate his number one job?
Well, yes, because he's the vice president of community.
Oh, okay, vice president.
Right. His job at Microsoft is to evangelize education and adaptability of the Microsoft technologies.
So at what point is this really marketing? This is definitely an aspect of marketing for Microsoft.
Well, this is where I think why our DevRel sometimes aren't technical, because maybe it's such a gray area where do companies treat your DevRel as a marketing spot? Because it's more evangelism, right? It's more pushing product than it is building relationships.
Yeah. And that is my, I guess that's what I wrestle with on trying to get my head around the whole DevRel position. And is this just another sneaky way for marketing to try to sell product? I'm not against buying product if it's worthwhile, but do I need to be tricked into it by a DevRel person? And it is that a unfair way to look at it?
I don't know. I guess beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. Well, so I'll go break into a slightly related story, and I don't know if you've heard this one before, but me and one of my consultants were doing a long-term consulting engagement out of New Jersey, and the hotel that we were staying at each week was right next to a pharmaceutical. Not necessarily a college, but a pharmaceutical
institution for learning.
Yeah, I guess, but it was actually from the vendor that was making the pills and that stuff, and basically they were breeding. Breeding is a bad word for this, but they were creating brand ambassadors for their pharmaceutical company to physically go and shake hands and greet doctors in their practices.
But that's a brand manager, right? Like that's somebody who's positively speaking about your brand, which your DevRels.
I don't know if I would say ambassador, but not manager. I don't know if I'd say manager.
Okay, but I would not put a DevRel and a brand ambassador in the same category.
Okay.
The reason I wouldn't is because the DevRel to me would be an internal person who's passionate about your technology, who is highly invested in your technology, and is part of your company. They're inside.
Part of your company, not the vendor's company.
Correct. Part of the company who owns the intellectual property. Versus a brand ambassador, I would see being almost like a hired talent. Yeah, they might be on your payroll, but their alliance is not necessarily to your company.
Yeah, and it's unclear how long these people work because they were all 20, 21, and they were all very attractive young blonde white women, and
Yeah,
it's like what is this? I'm sure this works very well to get all the doctors' attentions out there,
yeah. But
but it made for an interesting stay at the hotels.
but I fundamentally do have a pretty big problem with that methodology, right? Because I think now we can start blurring from brand ambassador to influencer, right?
Uh,
Which is something that I do,
yeah.
and and I make a lot of technical tutorials all out of the goodness of my heart,
Mhm.
right? Because I don't have an affiliation or an alliance with the brands or companies that I work with to develop the content that I make. But the reason I'm bringing this up is, to me, it hurts when I see someone have a brand deal with, let's just use Atlassian as an example because I work with them the most. But to me, it personally hurts when I see a YouTube video that is, sponsored by Atlassian or was, paid by Atlassian to an individual who has a lot of reach because they have a lot of influence, but they don't know the first thing about Jira. They don't know the first thing about Atlassian culture. They don't know the first thing about anything about this company that I don't particularly care for because I don't work for them, but somehow love a lot too much, right? But the bigger problem is that they evangelize incorrectly because they're so at the shallow, shallow, shallow part that they don't know necessarily the right or the wrong way to promote something
Sure.
technical. They just
So
follow a script.
yeah.
So, Release Team, DevOps tool specialists. We provide professional services and software reselling around the leading software DevOps tools like Atlassian, GitLab, GitHub, JFrog, and others. To talk with us about DevOps, here's our contact information. Please call 866-887-0489 or via email at info@releaseteam.com.
what's the difference between an influencer and a spokesman?
Well, I think an influencer, I think MKBHD is the best example of this. If you've ever heard of MKBHD,
No.
he's a YouTuber. He's one of the biggest YouTubers in the tech space, and he does product reviews.
Okay.
You may have heard of Fisker Automotive.
I have, yes.
You may have heard that Fisker Automotive is no longer a thing.
Okay.
They don't really exist as a car company anymore.
They still sell parts, I believe, but okay.
I don't know that they do anything anymore.
Oh, okay.
And the reason that they don't do anything anymore is because they built a car,
Mhm.
a pretty you know uh, good electric car. They delivered that car to an influencer,
Okay.
right? And they told the influencer that he could not review the car yet because they needed to do a software update. And the
You reviewed
influencer,
it.
the influencer said, "No, I'm gonna do the video with what the consumer gets today." And so they did not give him the car. So then he went through some back channels, obviously not using his identity, and obtained a car
Okay.
and then did the review.
Oh.
It bankrupted Fisker.
Oh.
It was the worst car. I gotta pull up the thing. You gotta see this. M MKBHD Fisker video. So his title of his video was "The Worst Car I've Ever Reviewed."
Oh.
Right here. The
Oh.
worst car.
Okay. I have
6.5
seen his reviews before.
Yeah,
Um,
6.5 million views on this video. And shortly after this video, and his only description is "Do not buy this version of the Fisker Ocean."
well,
Shortly
he.
after this one, if you look at the timestamps of February 17, 2024,
Uh-huh.
and Fisker Automotive bankruptcy, and you'll see that shortly after, just 2 to 3 months later, they filed for bankruptcy. And so I think that's the difference when you ask me what's the difference between a spokesperson and an
Influencer.
influencer. An influencer can shift opinions of the
Mhm.
consumer. A
Yeah.
spokesperson is just there to evangelize.
Yeah. I would definitely, restate that to be an influencer is not directly paid by, you know, a
But they
company.
No, but they are sometimes though. Sometimes they are
Not,
because
yeah, that's why I said directly paid. They're not
no, but
necessarily
they
on
are.
payroll always. Yeah.
No, because this is something that upset me a lot with Atlassian in 2024 was the Jira Life, the other podcast that I have.
Mhm.
We went to the Jira Life and we went to Teams and we were trying to capture content, and it's scary to try to capture content because people don't want to be interviewed.
Yeah.
They don't want to say something. They don't want to like accidentally get themselves in trouble or get fired. And so people are generally hesitant to be wanting to be on camera. However, Atlassian in 2024, I don't know if they did it in 2025. I was not privileged to see anything, but in 2024, they paid 2 influencers with over 100,000 subscribers and followers on YouTube to come to Team, sit front row, to take a picture at Team, to blast on their social networks.
All right.
And it was just an influencer marketing move, right? But that to me felt bad because it wasn't authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Completely.
those two people have nothing to do with Atlassian. They could care less about Atlassian. They don't care about the culture of Atlassian. They don't care about the products that Atlassian makes. They were just there on a branded deal.
Yeah. Unlikely they know anything about software development
Right.
at all. Yeah.
Which
So
then again it hurts
I
because then
remember
someone like me
being
that
in one
does.
of the meetings where they were announcing that they were doing more with paid influencers. But then I never saw any any other evidence that
We
they were.
wouldn't have seen it because we're not the target audience of those influencers.
Mm,
They wouldn't have shown up in your feeds.
yeah.
But that
Well,
does beg the question: if
yeah.
you're a
Was that
company,
worthwhile? Yeah.
but it begs the question, right? Like I think we go back to why we had developer relations, right? If you have a company that does have some sort of a software element to it, and you're trying to raise awareness, how else do you raise awareness? Because your engineers aren't going to be able to. Like I was telling you, this whole Martin Eberhard
Yeah.
thing, like there's no way I would not put Martin in front of anybody,
Yeah.
in front of any camera, because he's too much of an engineer,
Mhm.
right? And an engineer cannot sell. Like that's why Elon. I don't know how they've let Elon get this far, this over this time, right? Because Elon should not be in front of a camera.
I would really agree with that. Yes, very much agree with that.
But yeah, there he is.
Well,
But
if you
I
go
think
back to Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, he was the engineer, and Jobs was the the pitch man, and that combination worked very well.
But there's a difference, though. There's a huge difference with what Jobs was, though, because Jobs was the chief product evangelist
Mhm.
and the visionary. He intimately knew the product before engineering even built it,
Mhm.
and that is a fundamental difference than like Cook today. Cook couldn't tell you a single thing that happens inside of any of his devices, right? And this is again a fundamental problem that I think both of you and I share, that you can't. How do you evangelize a product when you don't know it so intimately?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's why Jobs did very well at that because
And
he
that's why
did.
he's a unicorn too. I don't see any other CEO other than maybe uh what's his name? JR. What's Rivian CEO's name? RJ. RJ.
RJ. Yeah.
RJ is an engineer and he's also the spokesperson for the brand, but RJ doesn't interview a whole lot. Like you don't hear about Rivian a lot in the news.
Well, if you look at all the different software tool vendors that we deal with, I don't think any of their CEOs are, you know, um, are really good spokesmen for
For the
their.
brand. Yeah, Jobs was definitely a one of a kind. Zuckerberg's a little bit. I think if you look at Zuckerberg today,
Yeah.
he's done a lot of training. Like go and look at an early Facebook like 2010, 2012 presentation of Zuck and look at him talking today.
Oh yeah, he's definitely
Very
improved
drastic.
tremendously, but he's still very robotic, and I don't think he connects with everybody or many people at all. But he definitely has gotten better. Um, but no, take it down from the big companies like Facebook and
But the
Google.
smaller companies, nobody talks publicly.
Yeah, they or when they do, nobody covers it. You
Right.
know, um, you know, I can name the CEOs of the majority of companies I partner with, which is probably a good thing. It'd be bad if I couldn't. But I don't think I can count more than a couple instances of them speaking outside their own venues, meaning their own conferences. So a little plug, like we're headed to JFrog SwampUp conference in a couple months.
What do you
And
mean a couple months? It's like 6 weeks away. It's 5
oh,
weeks away.
I count months weird, I guess. But yeah, roughly 6 weeks we'll be in Napa Valley for JFrog SwampUp. And hopefully we be doing some on the spot interviews and maybe recording an episode from there. So I should call and see if we need permission for that. But if not, we'll do it in the parking lot or something. But anyway. I think Shlomi, the CEO of JFrog, is an excellent speaker, but I don't know if I can pinpoint where he's spoken outside of a JFrog event.
You know who's doing it well?
Who?
Jensen.
Who?
Jensen, NVIDIA.
Oh, NVIDIA. Okay.
I would give him more credit. I think he's good enough to dumb down the the technical jargon, excited enough, but still knows his stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen him speak though.
Watch
So
him.
we should-
I mean, he does CES and he does video, the Gamers Conference, and he does a lot of publicly facing stuff that's not NVIDIA hosted.
So when I attend CES, to me it's all about the show floor. So I do the expo when I go to CES, and I don't necessarily stay for the talks.
Well, Jensen is worth watching. I think he's like I'm telling you, he's one of those guys that he would be the closest thing to Jobs that I see right now.
Okay.
Where he's a visionary and he can articulate well and he can dumb it down for you, but still he's in that design review meeting asking about every single line of code. But anyways, I think we should start wrapping this one up. Developer relations, I think it's a critical role. I think one that probably usually gets cut first.
Oh, yeah. So that is something I've noticed. So the one particular podcast that I didn't name but I referred to, there's about anywhere between 6 and 10 hosts of the show, and they rotate the show, but they've also rotated jobs. They seem to bounce in and out of a lot of different tool vendor companies. So what would you think or what would you guess the longevity of a DevRel position is? I'm going to say 2 years.
Yeah, I was going to say 18 months, but yeah.
18 months, yeah. So just under 2 years. And does that help if you're the vendor that are hiring these people, why would you rotate them that often? Because eventually they rise to the level of a spokesman for you, and if they're good, people recognize them.
Because you have to be you don't have to be good, you have to be great to excel in these positions, I think.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be like a Dom at Atlassian.
Okay.
Right? Where you're known as just, if I say Dom at Atlassian, like everybody should know who Dom at Atlassian is. Because of the global reach, right?
Yeah.
Anybody else, like if you want to succeed and maintain your job as a DevRel, you do not want to be mediocre.
Well, yeah,
I think in the middle.
Yeah, I would hope that people that are in that position realizes that the bar is pretty high, for them to be talking to everybody, to be recognized, to be at all the events that they need to be. They can't just sit in their home office and phone it in. They have to be going to all the industry events.
But not only that, but they gotta tip the balance on that imposter. We won't even call it the syndrome part, right? But they have to not be the imposter, right? They have to do such a great job that you can get fooled. And like you wouldn't know that they were impossible, like that they were not
Yeah.
homebred, if you will.
Yeah, it's okay for them not to be, the world's best developer, but they can't come off as, untrustworthy or fake, because as soon as developers see that, then they're not going to listen.
Are you okay? Are you more okay though if they're transparent and upfront about it first?
I am a lot more okay with it if that's their opening statement. So we go back to the scenario. I'm sitting in a DevOps days. There's like 200-300 people in the crowd with me, and someone comes up on stage, and if their opening thing is, I'm a theater major, and but
We're gonna have some fun for the next hour.
yeah, but I'm going to talk about IT for the next hour. But they give you some sort of segue between, their background and why they're talking about this. Then I'm okay, and I'm not going to judge them poorly. If they don't do that and they just start, going through, PowerPoint slides after PowerPoint slides about, how this product solved this problem, they're going to lose me, and I would assume they're going to lose the majority of the crowd. There's been a so I've been going to conferences since 1994, and probably towards the end of the 90s, and South Park did a really good thing, example of this too. There's a pattern to a talk at a conference. And I definitely think that we should be shattering this pattern and not following this. And in fact, we can plug your event coming up, and hopefully not all of the topics follow this pattern or sessions. And that's where you present a problem, you go into much detail about what the problem is, you hand wave around the solution and don't really go into details, and then you come up with, this was the outcome.
Right.
This was the results. We got 3 times more of this, 4,000 times more of this, and that's your big thing that you highlight, and you
for our particular conference. So shameless plug: October 22nd to the 24th, Long Beach Hilton. Registrations are open, but the whole premise of the whole reason we're doing that conference is because we wanted to do the hand waving part only.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So we want to go deeper into what happened in the hand waving, and the spirit of the conference is let's actually not do the hand wave and show what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So that's the whole spirit. But so we're going to be judging our speakers against that.
And Atlassian is guilty of this, but they're not the only ones. So I don't want to just beef on Atlassian. Let's beef on the entire industry.
Yeah, no, all industry conferences, I've seen the same thing. It's surface, shallow content, which is why I made a tech conference for the people, by the people, because the whole premise of it is you actually learn how to use it. I expect people to walk out of this conference knowing how to do something.
Yeah,
that they didn't know walking into it.
I will appreciate going to conferences like that again, because they used to always be, the vendor conferences that would have multiple tracks, and you'd really only have one of the fluff track, and that was kind of directed by the PR or the marketing organization, and then the other tracks were the deep dives into learning how to do something with this new API, or how to interface with this new tool or whatever. Those days are gone for most of the vendor conferences. So I'm excited to attend the one in October.
Yeah, well, I'm excited that you're going to be there, because that's one, and now I need 149 others. So if you're watching this, you're going to be in the Long Beach area or want to be in the Long Beach area, October 22nd to the 24th. Definitely stop.
Registration is open for that.
Yeah, we'll put a link down below.
Okay, right. Well, I think we can wrap up now. We may revisit this topic because we didn't quite get to communities and the community managers.
No, we did not. So I think we should have one on.
I think that they kind of dovetail in here a little bit.
I think so, but I think it's worth enough having a dedicated community discussion.
It is. and different vendors handle that differently. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I think we're good for this episode.
This one.
Thank you everyone for watching.
Make sure you subscribe, drop a like, share with your friends and colleagues, and we'll see you next week.
Bye everyone.